Angie Narvaez.
Gabriela Alexandra González Carpio.
Sierra Smith.
Tisha Beneka.
Aaliyah Brown.
Tatiana Haynes.
Jasmine Davis.
Ayana Archer.
Jalissa Rodriguez.
Muhammad Dukure.
Katie Daly.
Gavin Vindro.
Latina.
African American.
Black.
Nigerian American.
Jamaican.
Black. Black.
Puerto Rican.
Malian American.
Black.
Ecuadorian.
African American.
Being a minority at Taft reminds me that the school wasn't made for me. I don't think the founders had in mind women of color when they thought of the people that they wanted in power in this country and that they wanted to be educated. And sometimes I still feel the remnants of the past because I value change and Taft values tradition.
Being Black at Taft makes me feel restricted in every way and form. I feel like my personality has to be subsided and turned down continuously because I have to take in consideration the feelings of others whenever I'm in a space. I feel like I take too much space. Being Black here is such a political statement by itself that it took me until my junior year to even figure that out.
Being a minority at Taft is difficult, and what I mean by difficult is that you have to work a bit harder to get half of what you see the other kids getting. Like, talking to other people, it's hard to connect with a person when you don't really understand their culture. For example, going to the jig and just sitting and talking about things like clothes, football, family, like the things that they connected with, I didn't feel like I did, and so it was harder for me to approach people as a freshman, and it's still hard now.
As a minority at Taft, there's both pros and cons. On one hand, I feel like I have a story that a lot of these kids here, they've never heard before, and I'm bringing something to the table. But at the same time, I feel like there's not that many teachers or even students here that I can relate to or that I can go to when I'm having a problem that has to deal with what makes me a minority.
Being a minority at Taft makes me feel like I have something different than everybody else, like I'm not the norm. And in that, there's many different pros and cons. I have a unique group of friends that go through the same experiences as me because they are minorities, but I also feel like to the people who aren't minorities, I'm so different that I'm like a hot commodity. Like, I'm just something to be analyzed and studied.
Being in a predominantly white community, I feel as though my culture and my identity is often washed out, or as though it's never really acknowledged.
Being a minority at Taft makes me realize how different I am. This being my first and only year here, it was definitely a culture shock for me, coming from a place where it's heavily populated with a bunch of different races that aren't white.
Being a minority at Taft means being the token student, being the so-called example and the summary of every single person who also identifies with said culture. Being a minority here means being the voice of thousands in one classroom, being the representative for an entire culture, religion, race. It means being the voice for those who apparently do not have one at Taft.
You need affinity groups to talk about your issues because the majority won't understand them even when you take the time to explain them.
I feel as if to be a minority at Taft, you have to take the burden as a teacher when you don't want to be.
I participated in this sit-in for Black Lives Matter this year in the hallway, and I was sitting holding a sign that said, "Taft is not okay." And during the debrief meeting afterwards, somebody asked me, how is Taft not okay? And I think that's a big part about being a minority here is that you constantly have to defend your experience and explain to people why things are not okay. I spend a lot of time thinking that I bear the burden of education. I felt like I had to do UCT, like I had to show people what it's like to be in my shoes.
My freshman year, I tried my best to hide the fact that I was a minority. In class, I didn't capitalize my name, I strained my hair, I bleached my skin. I did several things to hide the inevitable truth because I didn't want to be different. I tried to assimilate, I tried to be a part of this community. And at the end of the day, it counter-reacted and I began doubting who I really was, who my identity was. And so being a minority here has empowered me in some ways and forms, but it has also hindered me in many more.
Being a minority at Taft means that you're different, and it means that you think about what you're doing and what you say and how you act all the time. You walk at night behind a group of kids and you try not to get too close because you don't want them worrying about what you're gonna do. You speak, but you try not to speak too loud because you don't want people thinking you're just another rambunctious black kid. And so being a minority at Taft makes you think so much about who you are and what you're doing at all times that it's difficult to live your life in the present moment.
Being a minority at Taft, for me, it just means that there aren't that many people here that you can talk to when you have something wrong that isn't the norm here. You don't fit in when you're sitting in a class or with your team. There's just not that many people here like you, and at times that can feel really isolating.
Being a minority at Taft definitely makes me proud of who I am. It makes me proud to say that I'm Latina. You know, I'm proud to say that I am different. I'm proud to say that I have roots and I have a culture, but at the same time, it's a little frustrating to feel as though because I have this culture and because I am unapologetically Latina, I'm not always accepted.
The hardest part about being a minority at Taft is trying to help people understand that there is a problem, that they can help, but that most people try to like throw it to the side or like invalidate that there isn't no problem. There isn't a problem when there surely is a problem, that like I'm a black man and I can get like, I don't know, looked at different compared to a white man who can dress the same as me. So I want people to understand that there is a problem and that it needs a solution, whether or not you can like help it now or later, but there needs to be a solution.
You can see I'm white-skinned. A lot of people mistaken me as white until I speak or until I finally tell them, you know, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Latina. And I remember when people found out that I wasn't white, I often got the, oh really, like I thought you were white, as though it's a compliment. And it bothers me because it's as though me being Latina is just not enough for them, or it's not what they really wanted, as though being white is what's really acceptable.
In classroom and dorm settings, I feel as though my opinions are invalidated because of my classmates' preconceived notions of what someone who looks like me is supposed to think.
I shouldn't have the burden of having to speak for my entire culture.
The hardest part about being a minority at Taft is knowing that you have experiences that a lot of people around you don't share.
Definitely one of the hardest things about being a minority at Taft is the relationship, hookup culture, scene thing, whatever you want to call it at Taft. I personally have not really had a problem with it because I don't care. But this winter for Mask and Dagger, I had to read a monologue about a black female student who was distressed about the dating culture at Taft, especially for Black girls. Her specific words were, she had to worry about whether white guys, Black guys, Hispanic guys, any guys at Taft were attracted to Black girls. And that's just the idea that a girl is thinking that she's not loved and she's not beautiful simply because of the culture and at Taft is just, it hurts. It hurts me, and it makes me feel as though that's something we definitely need to work on. And
the hardest part, I think, is forgetting sometimes to look in the mirror and see, you know, the plus sides of the skin you have. There'd be times when I'm, you know, walk past a reflection and try to rub my skin and actually feel and actually try to, you know, erase what the reality is. Because at times when I'm on this campus, I feel like I don't really see the value and plus of having this skin. You know, I try to tell myself that I matter and that I'm beautiful, but based off of, you know, the culture here, I sometimes forget that. There have been instances in which I have not felt safe, in which my life has been at risk in several ways and forms because of something that I was born with. And so at the end of the day, it has hurt me and it has affected me greatly, because at times I wish I wasn't who I was. I wish that I wasn't what I identified as. You know, I continuously doubt myself. And so you know, I have to keep telling myself that I'm doing this for a reason, not to, you know, always have the obligation to educate and to enlighten and to open the minds. You know, I can't always think of myself as just, you know, the only person who opens the doors. You know, having my skin color be a door opener to conversations like you wouldn't usually be there. It took me a while to figure out that it wasn't my job to do that my skin color wasn't the only opener, that I don't have to keep it open. That conversation should be there when my Blackness isn't there as well. And so I've hated and loved the fact that I was Black, that I am Black. But at times Taft has made it harder to realize, you know, the beauty and value in it at the end of the day.
I find myself jumping at the opportunity to listen to panelists when they come to talk about race and identity, because I feel like if I want to educate the community, then I need to be informed myself. And one time I went in and I asked, how do I tell people what it's like to feel unsafe? Because I have felt unsafe at Taft. And I don't mean physically unsafe. I mean, like I'm in a room full of people who don't share my identity, who can't defend me because they don't know what it's like to have immigrant parents. They don't know what it's like to fear the police. They don't know what it's like to be in a classroom at Parents' Day and have somebody say immigrants don't deserve the same rights as people who've been here for a long time. And that's what it's like to feel unsafe. Like, no matter how much you speak, no matter how loud you speak, nobody listens and nobody defends you, and sometimes not even my teachers.
My parents were going through a really hard transition. My parents are immigrants, and they were trying out for papers, and they were just recently declined citizenship, and that's been very hard on my family. And coming back to Taft after Christmas week break, I struggled a lot with compensating about everything that just occurred. My family's been trying for a few years now, and it's put a lot of pressure on me personally. But coming back to Taft, I sought counseling and I talked to my teachers, and I talked to Ms. Benedict, who's been a big support to me and my family and what I've been going through, and has helped me realize that it's not the end of the world, and has helped me cope with something that many people don't understand here, and that's something very personal that I thought she did a really good job helping me throughout.
So this year we had a debrief after we had a sit-in revolving Black Lives Matter movement, but to me it was more a sit-in to raise awareness about how students of color at Taft don't feel safe. And many students talked about their experience. They explained how they felt, their feelings, and so many other students just kept asking, but what are the facts? What are the facts? Like, trying to invalidate our experiences and how we feel. And it just hurts because all we want is for people to really listen to us. If I go through something, I want you to listen. Listen so that you understand what I'm going through. Don't listen just to respond to me. You know, I cried in front of every student in that room because I'm getting emotional. I literally cried in front of everybody in that room because, you know, it's hard. It's hard to be a Latina at Taft. It's hard to be Black at Taft, and to constantly have students bashing you for your experience and for them to tell you how you feel, for them to tell you how you should feel. It hurts. And that's why we feel unsafe. We feel unsafe because we're not heard. We're not listened to. Nobody really tries to empathize or understand. And when they do, I want you all to understand how great that makes all of us feel. Because that's literally all that we want.
So the one memory that I can recall that has negatively affected me as a minority at Taft, a person of color, is after the sit-in that took place this year, when we had the discussion after in regards to reasoning for why we hosted the sit-in, the theme of police brutality that eventually led to Trump's election, everything. I sat here exposing my body and my soul and my experiences to those who were willing to listen, but at the end of the day, I felt insignificant, and I felt like if I wasn't a number, then I was invalid in that conversation. At the end of the day, I left that room thinking that if I didn't have, you know, numbers placed across my forehead, then everything that I said out of my mouth was invalidated and not valid in general. I looked back at those pieces that I placed down in front of myself, and I couldn't really bring them back into me because I lost the value just like they did. And so that really negatively affected me in that moment and to this day.
One experience which positively affected me was where I used my experience to write a story. It was for Mr. Merrill's English class my junior year. And it was a story which really dove into the idea of racism at Taft and how it's little nuances and sort of underlying comments that really get to you. And so I was able to take my experience and really sit down and write about it, and that was just a new concept for me, just really putting myself out there and giving it as an academic piece of work. And in the end, I got a really good grade for that creative writing piece because I really put myself on the line. And so you can take your experiences, you can take your hurt, and you can transform that into something positive.
One positive scenario is when, for example, let's just be honest, the dance floor is really good, and I would say that we have a lot of good moves. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that African Americans have superior abilities with dancing, but it does feel nice when like they go up to us and they're like, oh, how do you hit them folks? And I'm like, hey, this is how you hit them folks. And then we like make the party lit. Let's just be honest right now. I'm sorry, but like, yeah, it's like that sense of community makes me feel really good inside. Yeah.
I'm popping, I'm black, it's fun. But then again, like, people look at you differently. They're like, oh, he's black. He has these things associated with him, these stereotypes. So it's like a win-lose situation. You look like you're a cool kid, but at the same time, it's like he has these associated with him. He's this, he's that. Even though I'm still just like a regular kid. Yes.
So another experience that has greatly affected me was my sophomore year in high school. It was during the time when the Black Lives Matter movement began to really progress, take social media by its head. So yeah, I was walking through the bookstore and I wanted to get a calculator because I had a math test the next day, calculus I think. And so I had to be prepared. I lost it before because, I usually don't have my life together, but that's another story. The calculators are behind the person at the counter, and for obvious reasons, I thought that if I would just go and grab the item, then there wouldn't be a problem. I'd pay for it, I'm right there, my money's in my hand. I thought it was fine. I go and reach behind the cashier, and the person yells at me saying, "What are you doing? Why are you here right now? What are you grabbing?" I'm shocked as there are several others in the room who begin to stare at the commotion in the moment, and I say to him, clearly, I am simply reaching for a calculator. I have a test tomorrow and I would like to pay for it. This person then continues to say that I have no right to be there in the first place. I have no right to grab it behind him. I have no right to be here. That I would have been shot if we were in New York. And so, I dropped the calculator, flabbergasted, eyes open, soul out, and I just walked away.
One experience that really positively impacted me as a minority here was participating in the sit-in, because it really helped me realize who I am as a person and really speak and use my voice, because I've never done that before, particularly with issues like race, because I've never had to, because I came from a predominantly Black institution and nobody ever really struggled with race at my school.
So coming to Taft my freshman year, it was definitely a culture shock. I have never seen so many white people in my life, and that's not like me trying to be funny or me joking. I've just never been surrounded by so many white people. I've grown up in a predominantly Black and Hispanic environment. I went to school where it was heavily dominated by Black and Hispanic people, and of course when I first came here I wanted to fit in, I wanted to make friends. That's human nature, but I didn't feel comfortable with the people I surrounded myself with. During this time I didn't really see minorities around, and if I did, it was rare. And while I was hanging out with certain people, I knew I was being judged. I knew that people were saying I was loud and I was sassy. I had an attitude, that I was rude. And I know that I'm really none of those things, unless need be. But it just sucked because I don't know how to be any less than who I actually am. So it wasn't until my junior year that I really found my group of friends. I really found the people that I needed to be around to feel comfortable and to speak up and to really talk about the things that I wanted to talk about, which was social justice. I wanted to talk about race. I wanted to talk about the problems that we have at Taft, because often it's silent. We're all nervous to talk about what needs to be talked about because we don't know how people will receive it. Taft isn't a bad place, but it's also not the greatest for students of color. And I want it to be. I want students to come to Taft, white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, anything, and feel as though this is the place for them. I don't want them to struggle.
To be a minority in Taft, I feel as though it is my duty to make people feel more comfortable around me. I can imagine many decades before, they were not as comfortable with people of an African descent who came to the school and who were the first people to come to the school and who were the role models of the school. and it may have been hard for them at their time, but years pass and they're starting to feel more comfortable, so I feel as though it's my duty to keep that system going and to make them feel more comfortable and for us to pursue a greater future for our children.
I am comfortable being myself, and it has not always been like this, especially freshman year. I was so much more quiet. I didn't talk, didn't speak, didn't smile, always wore my hair in braids, tried to talk a certain way, try to walk a certain way. I would analyze everything I was doing. Am I sitting the right way? Am I breathing the right way? Am I looking at the right people? Am I listening the right way? Like different small things that I would always notice about myself. And yes, I still notice them now, but like, I just think, why does it matter? Like now I'm completely comfortable with who I am, and I'm completely happy with who I am. Like it's probably the first time that I've felt that I can be whoever I want at any time. Like if I want to yell and say, if I want to yell and scream when I see my friends in the hallway, I'll do that. If I want to say hello to a random kid in the hallway that I don't know, I'll do that, and it doesn't matter to me anymore. And I do thank Taft for that, because I feel like being constantly questioned helped me sort of push back, and that's how I grew.
Talk to me.
You know, hell yeah, I felt ostracized, you know, especially my first and second year coming here to the Taft School. Having 95% of the classes that I've been in, you know, I've been the only black girl, and, you know, it was hard trying to adjust, you know, trying to figure out what crew was without being a posse and what squash was. You know, I thought it was the vegetable, and I kept trying to look for Lily Pulitzer and the Vera Cross, but she wasn't there, and it was different. It was hard. I had to assimilate. I had to figure it out. That white culture, the culture shock, it stuck in deep. And so, you know, after the perm wore out and after all my hair fell out because it said perm, I didn't really have another option but to just kind of live with what I was and not care about what others thought. And if that caused me to be a little alone at times in Prentice and in lunch, you know, that's what happens. So yes, I was ostracized, but you have to learn to love yourself even when others can't really see that little light you got inside of you.
It wasn't until I got to Taft that I learned to love my hair and my curls and everything they do, because they have a life of their own, and even though they take a lot of maintenance, it's part of who I am. And sometimes my mom says like fix your hair, and then you can't fix something that's not broken. But I don't like when the first thing people do when they see me is touch my hair. It makes me so uncomfortable. Sometimes I don't have the heart to tell my friends not to touch my hair because I know that people are well-intentioned. But the thing about our intentions is that no matter how much you mean well, the impact of your actions could be very different. And when you touch my hair before you say hello to me, it's like this is all you see. It's like the only thing that you see in me is that I'm different.
One time I was sitting in class and I was just minding my own business, trying to learn. And then all of a sudden, there's like 2 or 3 girls just like touching my hair, and they're like, oh my gosh, can you feel that? And I'm like, yes, I can feel it. It's my hair. What are you talking about? And I was just like, it was almost like paralyzed because I really couldn't do anything at the moment. I was just like, do I cause a scene and be like, yo, stop touching my hair? Or do I just sit there and let them treat me like I was somebody who was like so different and so fascinating that they just had to touch me?
I'm slowly but surely getting to a point where I'm feeling comfortable with being my authentic self, to be able to express myself freely and unapologetically without receiving any sort of backlash, or without looking at the backlash, for a better phrase. But it hasn't always been that way. Since freshman year, coming here, I had to I thought I had to conform to an unspoken status quo here, to wear all the latest Vineyard Vines or Lily Pulitzer, or to have my hair a certain way, or to walk and talk a certain way. And I didn't realize that it was eating me apart. But finally, and luckily, I was able to realize that from a very early part of freshman year. And I was able to let that go and say, okay, I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna be loud. I'm going to give positive comments in assembly if someone says something good and I agree with it. And I'm not really gonna care about the consequences. And
I guess I just like the TAF community to know that being a minority or being different doesn't mean I don't belong, doesn't mean that it's bad. I have just as much right to be here as any other person here. And just because I'm a minority and just because there aren't that many of me doesn't mean that you should point that out or you should set me aside just because of something that makes me not like you.
I would like the community to know that I'm no different than anybody else here in terms of belonging. I might be different in the way that I look and the way that I act in the place that I come from, but I'm just as qualified to be here as anybody else who comes from a more affluent family and a more affluent line of people and connections.
I want the community to know I'm just a regular old dude. I'm not different just because I'm black or this. I might not listen to like the same music as you, have the same hair, the same skin color, whatever. I might not dress the same as you, but deep down, I'm just a human being. I don't care. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black. Like deep down, I'm just a person, and I think like people need to know that.
So to any kid watching this that is a student of color coming into Taft, at Taft, going to a regular, predominantly white community, I want you to know that you're valid. You're 100% valid. And I don't want you to question yourself because you don't look like everybody. I don't want you to second guess who you are and where you came from. I don't want you to strip yourself from your identity and your culture because that's not okay. You're unique and that's great. You will find those that you need to be around just by being yourself. So I ask that you do just that. Be yourself, and you will find those who will lift you up and who will love you for you.
There is a place for you here, and if there isn't, you can create one for yourself. Don't let other people tell you that you're not allowed to do that. You are. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to live up to other people's expectations. The most important ones are the ones you have for yourself.
I would like to tell minorities at a predominantly white institution like Taft that just because you are a minority doesn't mean that you don't belong, and you are just as qualified to be here as everybody else. And although there are times where you might feel like you're different and you are just set aside from everybody else, from the norm, to embrace that, but also use your voice to make it so that it's not the norm, and that so that one day, hopefully, everybody will see that minorities, just because we are minorities, we are not different, and we are not to be looked at as somebody or people who are to be set aside and to be looked at and analyzed like they are different.
You don't have to fit in. You belong here just as much as anyone else, and if anyone ever makes you feel like you don't, then you don't need to be around them. You are obviously here for a reason, and any white community you're in, you're there for a reason, and you shouldn't feel like you have to prove your worth or your belonging anywhere at any point in time.
It's okay to be you no matter where you come from. Never be ashamed of who you are, and don't let other people determine that for you.
You are the shit. Just kidding. Don't let anyone say otherwise, because I know there will be several instances when you're sitting here and saying, am I actually worth being here? Am I worth this space? You're worth all the space, and if not, take more of it because you deserve it. That silence is never something that you should never resort to silence. Always use your voice. Never hold back. Never invalidate your own experiences before they do, because they are valued and they are valid, and you are valid. You will have instances in which you sit there and ask, why are you here? Why did you put yourself in this predicament, in this situation? Being a person of color within a predominantly white school, why did you set yourself up for this? You didn't set yourself up. You just simply wanted to get the education that you have always deserved, but the system will never give you.
I think they should just be confident in themselves, because, you know, like I said before, like, there's nothing wrong being black. You're cool. I don't know, like, you're popping. Like I said before, I think I need to stop saying popping. I'm saying that way too much now.
I would say to other students of color coming into Taft, or who are already here, to just be yourself. If you're yourself, people will either respect it or not respect it, but if you're yourself, you'll respect yourself, basically. So just be yourself, like I am in this video. Like, just, okay. That was ugly, but yeah.
As we walk through these hallways, we are forced to carry the weight of our experiences on our backs. We hide this baggage with complacency, but no facade can last indefinitely. As our bodies assimilate, our identity is questioned, and we begin to lose ourselves. It's human nature. But there comes a time when we realize that individuality is more precious than fitting in. And sometimes it takes a few people to show us how to fully embrace our idiosyncrasies. Although my past 4 years have been difficult, Taft has made me into the strong, independent leader that I am today. I now walk through these hallways with my identity and culture fully intact. I am no longer scared, and I am no longer silent. I speak of what needs to be spoken upon, and I no longer hide who I am. I am loud. I am energetic. I am beautiful. I am Latina. If it weren't for Taft, I don't think I would have found myself completely. That through all the trials and error, through all the struggles and hardships, I've grown in a way that I wouldn't have been able to anywhere else. And for that, I thank Taft. I thank Taft for allowing me to grow into the woman I am today, for the lifelong friends I will now carry on with me, for the memories and laughs I will forever cherish, and for giving me the chance to attend such a prestigious school. But I asked Taft to continue to progress, to learn from mistakes made from the past. I asked Taft to listen to this video with open minds as we expose our souls and leave ourselves vulnerable. I asked that Taft works to a safer and better community for minorities, because all we want is to be heard.